Hello guys, welcome to the next episode in this Mercedes Sprinter van conversion. In today's video we're going to start on the furniture build. All of the hard work's been done with the first fix and installation and all of the things that you don't really see in the finished product, but now we get to start doing the fun side of it, and that's building all the furniture. I'm going to break these videos down into a number of different parts because it's a lot to cover, so I'm going to build each element in a separate video. We're firstly going to start with this dividing wall that you can see behind me. This is one of the main structural members of our van build. It divides the living area from the bedroom and the garage area. We need to get this wall in first because everything else is really built off of that. When we were doing our research online, we chose Morland UK. They're a manufacturer here in the UK. They make a lightweight furniture board and they do an absolutely huge range of different finishes and colours, and there's a massive range that you can choose from. So we went onto their online shop and we ordered some samples so that we can have a look and see what the board was actually going to look like before we chose to buy it. I'm really pleased with the quality of this board. It's 7-ply with 2 sheets of laminate on either side, and you can see just by this cut edge here the construction is really good, and it's got really good screw retention properties, and it cuts and leaves a really nice finished edge with a good blade. So it's been really nice to work with. You'd have also seen on the previous video when we did the headliner, we chose our vinyl covered ply from Morland as well. They do a range of these 3mm plies covered with a wiped down vinyl finish, and that's what we chose for the headliner, and you can have a look at that. I'll put a link up here to that video if you want to see us installing that. First of all, we're going to start with the framework. So let's have a look at the timber that we're going to use. When buying timber in the UK, most DIY stores stock it in 2 different variants. You've got CLS and PSE. What that stands for, CLS is Canadian Lumber Standard. This is usually distinguished by these rounded off corners, and this type of timber is normally used for construction timber for framework and stud work. So this is the sort of timber that you'd use for carcassing work. PSE stands for planed squared edge, and as you can see this is much more dimensional lumber, and you'd use this for finer work such as face frames and cabinetry. This has been planed to a square, more accurate dimension, and this is what you normally use for your finished cabinetry work. When I'm selecting timber, what I like to look for is nice, tight, close, straight grain like this. If I can bring this up here, you may be able to see all this grain is very close together and it very straight, and hardly any knots in this at all. And then if you look from the end, you can see this quarter sawn pattern, and I always try and rummage through the bin and pick these pieces out. Straight grain, quarter sawn, hardly any knots in, and you'll find these won't tend to warp or twist. They'll keep their shape a lot better over time. Right, what we're doing here, we're just framing out the sidewalls of the garage with some 1.5" square timber. It's nominally a 2x2, but it comes up about 1.5" square. I picked it because it's definitely strong enough for what we need. It doesn't need to be 2x4 like I've seen some people do. It's just way too much, way too heavy. This will be plenty strong enough, and plus it's only £2 for an 8-foot length. So we're just doing a dividing wall between the garage and the living area. Now it's no good using a spirit level in your van because you may not be parked on level ground, so the only thing you can rely on is a proper builder's square. So as long as you're square to the floor, your posts are vertical, you'll have half a chance. So I've just clamped all this together temporarily with a load of clamps just to make sure that it's all square and in the right place, and then we can drill some pilot holes and drive some screws in. The best way to mark your studs is to put just the edge of the piece of timber on the bottom stud, and then reach up inside here with your pencil, sharp pencil, score a little line, and then if we cut that, just leaving that mark showing, that stud will be nice and tight. I'll just touch the blade on the edge of that pencil mark. You can just make out a little bit of the pencil mark. Now we can offer this stud up, and now you'll see it's nice and snug. And then what we'll do is we'll square that and then drill it and screw it. We've got these vertical studs screwed into this horizontal timber and also screwed into this rail at the bottom. All I'm doing now is just got the builder's square to the floor, just making sure that this is vertical in relation to the floor before we fix this sole plate down to the floor. The next job's going to be to cut this shower cubicle wall in the furniture board. Obviously the furniture board's really expensive, so I don't want to waste that. So I'm going to cut a cardboard template to start with. What I've done is I've just clamped one of the scrap pieces of wood, so I know that's dead square with the floor, and then on there I've just put some marks every couple of 100 mil all the way up that stick. And then what I'll do is I'll measure from the side of that stick to the wall at each of those locations, and then I'll transfer that to a piece of cardboard. That'll give me a rough starting point. We can hold that up and then see where we need to go from there. So now I've transferred those marks off my measuring stick to this piece of cardboard. I'm just going to cut that rough curve out, and then we'll offer that up, make sure that this fits nicely before we start cutting any furniture board. We've now just transferred the cardboard template to a bit of scrap leftover ply. This is just a little bit of 3mm ply, and then we've just done another test fit. So I just want to make sure that this join and all the way down here is going to be really good. It's worthwhile just messing around with some scrap supply, because although, you know, this is only going to cost us a couple of quid, when we come to cut the furniture board we're looking at £150 possibly for a piece of furniture board. So I don't want to wreck that. I want to make sure this template is absolutely perfect, transfer this to the furniture board and know it's going to fit first time. These furniture boards don't come with a clean factory edge. Some of the laminate is overhanging, so the first thing we've got to do before we start doing anything else is give ourselves a nice clean edge. So I'm just going to cut a few millimeters off this board just to give us a straight edge to work from. Now that we've got one nice clean edge on this side, I've just taken my T-square and I've, with the straight edge, marked another line exactly at 90 degrees to this line, because I can't guarantee that that rough edge is square to this nice clean edge. So with the T-square we can ensure that this corner is definitely going to be 90 degrees, and then we've got two straight edges to work off. We've got our template out of plywood scribed to exactly the shape of the van. Now I'm just going to transfer it to this masking tape that's on the furniture board, and then we can use that as our cut line. There we go. You can see how nicely that fits now. We took a bit of time scribing those cardboard and plywood templates, but that's really paid dividends. That's a lovely clean crisp edge. We're reusing the template that we used on the other side. You'd think these two halves of the roof would be the same, but they're quite clearly not. This one's a little bit out. So I'm going to re-scribe this line to the shape of this side of the roof. We've got about not quite a 10mm gap here, and then it's touching here. So again, the distance of your scribe wants to be the same as the widest point, and then you want to keep it vertical all the time and just mark the board with touching the ceiling very lightly, keeping the scribe vertical, and then that's our new line. We'll cut to that, and then that should push up nice and snug. We're going to be putting PVC trim on all of these edges around the wall cupboards and around the kitchen, so to ease these corners so that the trim will mould around there nice and easy. I'm just using this tin of Hammerite and just tracing a circle on all these sharp corners, and then we'll cut this template out, and then we'll use this as a guide to cut the furniture board. We're just marking it out just to get an idea of how it's going to look. So this is the template that we made for the kitchen side of the dividing wall. I've just laid this on top of a new bit of furniture board. I've marked it out with this masking tape and a pencil, and then we're just going to cut this out. I've cut to this square corner, and now I want to come this way. Rather than ruin the whole board here, and simply drill a hole here, stick the jigsaw in and carry on. It's a thing of beauty. What do you reckon? This is one of the only places in the van where we need to do a full width sheet and full height of the van, so we can't get that out of one board, so we're going to have to make a joint, and I'm going to make the joint on this stud here. What I've done is I've put a little bit of tape behind this board, and I'm going to run my pencil down the edge of this board so it marks this piece of tape, and then I can cut to that line and these two boards should meet perfectly. So there we go guys, the dividing wall is in position. Can you spot the joint? I'm really pleased with that. All scribed in, really nice and neat. Yeah, you've got to be happy with that. What we need to do now is we need to run a slot around this profile so that we can put the PVC trim into it. So we'll set up the trestles in the workshop, get the little trim router out and run that slot round there. When we run the slot down here, I'm also going to run the slot straight the way into this board as well. And when we put the trim on, that will help to conceal that join, cover that up, and it will also help to hold these two boards together a little bit. I've set up the trim router with the slot cutting bit, riding on a little ball bearing here, and I've just set it up with this piece of scrap so that the slot cutting bit falls directly in the middle of the board. I'm just going to run a test piece just to check that it's properly centered, make any adjustments, and then we can cut the actual workpiece. There, that looks pretty good on that test piece. We'll just pop a little bit of trim in there just to make sure. Yeah, that looks really good. Yeah, we'll go with that. On this side of the central dividing wall, I've put a piece of timber there which will support the edge of the shower tray. There's also got a cutout in the corner here for the heating ductwork and the electrical cables to come through. These are the two holes for the shower mixer and then for the hose for the shower head. And then I've put a row of fixings in here which go into that timber stud that's in the garage, and previously we built that studwork wall. Well, these screws fix into that. Also, the screws that hold this board on go right the way through the furniture board and also into that studwork member there. So that ties all of that together. That studwork member is obviously screwed to the floor, so that makes this wall now really solid. You can plan where you want to put your fixings. I know that this inside surface of the shower is going to get covered with white PVC sheeting, so any screws or fixings I put in here are not going to be seen anyway. And then what we'll do for this side is I'll screw from the back through into the board and make sure that I've got the right length screws so they don't come through the face of the board, and I'll fix them from behind. This is the doorway now for the garage, from the living portion into the garage. That's now all trimmed, and it just remains now just to fix this large board. And again, we're going to have the kitchen cupboards here, so any fixings in this part here, as long as they're within the confines of the kitchen cupboard, I can fix through from this side and they're not going to be seen. So there we go, that's the dividing wall done in the van. I'm really pleased how those scribed lines turned out between the dividing wall and the ceiling. That's given it such a really neat finish. I'll put some links in the description below for everything that we've used in this video. I'll put links to Morland UK's website. You can go onto their online shop, have a look through their whole product range. If you want to order some samples yourself, you can do that before you commit to buying the furniture board. I really do recommend their furniture board. It's been so easy to work with and it cuts so cleanly. It's been an absolute dream to install. I'm going to continue now with the rest of the furniture build. We've got the high level wall cupboards to build, we've got the bench seat to build, and we've also got the kitchen units to build. So there'll be a number of videos in this furniture series, so make sure that you're subscribed. You don't want to miss the next video, and thanks very much for watching. Cheers!